ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਸਿੱਖ ਚੈਨਲ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਦਰਸ਼ਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਅਮਰਿੰਦਰ ਦੀ ਪਿਆਰ ਭਰੀ ਫਤਿਹ ਪ੍ਰਵਾਨ ਹੋਵੇ। ਮੇਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਅੱਜ ਸਟੂਡੀਓ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੂਲਸ ਹਾਰਟਲੀ ਜੀ ਮੌਜੂਦ ਨੇ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਹਾਲੀਵੁੱਡ ਦੇ ਐਕਟਰਸ ਨੇ, ਪਰ ਇਹ ਸਿੱਖ ਧਰਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਬੜੇ ਲੰਬੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਤੋਂ ਰੁਚੀ ਰੱਖਦੇ ਆ ਰਹੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਸੰਬੰਧੀ ਕਾਫੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੈਂਪ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਹਿੱਸਾ ਲਿਆ ਆ ਤੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਨੂੰ ਸਿੱਖ ਵੀ ਕਹਾਉਂਦੇ ਆ। ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਵਜੋਂ ਆਪਣਾ ਨਾਮ ਸਰਸਵਤੀ ਕੌਰ ਤੇ ਅੰਮ੍ਰਿਤਾ ਕੌਰ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਇਹ ਨਾਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਰੱਖੇ ਹੋਏ ਆ। ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਅੱਜ ਇੱਥੇ ਗੁਫ਼ਤਗੂ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਚੈਨਲ ਤੇ। ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਜੀ ਫਸਟ ਆਫ ਆਲ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। And I assume it's your first time in Canada?
I've been to Montreal before. It's my first time in Toronto.
English Canada. So okay, perfect. So how are you liking it?
I love it.
Excellent. So what brought you here to Canada this time around?
So I'm working on a film and it's called The Last King, and it's basically a fictional story, but it's a takeoff on the story of Maharaj Ranjit and the Kohinoor Diamond. So anyway, it's a modern day tale, and basically it's about whether or not they can return the diamond to its rightful place back in Punjab and where it belongs with its people. So anyway, it's kind of an action adventure flick.
Very cool. Now it seems like a very good project. And when do you guys kind of come up with that movie? Do you have any timelines right now?
So we're shooting in 2 segments. We're shooting part of the film now, and we're going to be shooting another part of it probably late June, early July. And then, you know, films usually take several months to a year, longer even, to be edited and marketed and distributed. So it'll be a while, but it's coming out in the future.
Absolutely. And let me tell you what Jules has done before. I don't want to, put her in an odd space or anything. And I asked her to talk about some of her stuff that she's done, but, I'd rather tell you what she's done. She's been part of What Happened. That's a movie you guys probably remember with Cameron Diaz and Ashton. So she was in there. The Measure of a Man. So that came out in 2011, and Jules was in it. And Wonderstruck, that came out last year, right?
Yeah, that was just actually a short film. The other 2 were features, but yeah.
Okay, wow. And some of the shows that she's been part of are The Young and the Restless. So that's a big series, and wow. And there's another one, hold on there, Saturday Night Live. So she was featured on that, as well as Law and Order. What haven't you done? So this is a remarkable resume, and how you got into films and movies. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So as a child, I did a lot of singing and dancing. That was like when I was a small child. I really loved ballet, and then I started singing at school, at church, at community center, community choirs. And then I got into community theater. So where I grew up was kind of suburbs. I grew up in San Diego and then Northern Virginia, outside of Washington, D.C. And we had very large community center there. And they actually have these professional productions that come through. Huge stage, huge professional equipment. And so anyway, I did a few of those productions, and that was sort of my foray into acting. And then I became an athlete, and it was really, my parents wanted me to be very focused on school and getting good grades when I was in junior high school and high school. So the arts thing kind of went to the side, and I was an athlete and, a student. But then once I got to college, I actually went to university as a runner. I was a distance runner, a track athlete, nationally competitive. And I got injured in my first semester, and I just decided that, you know what, I don't think I'm going to go to the Olympics. Like, you think you are, like, when you're super competitive like that, but I just decided there were other things out there, and I wanted to check it out. And as soon as I stopped running, I had all this, like, extra time and energy, right? And what came back to me was the performing arts and acting, and I knew I wanted to be in New York, so I drove myself on up to New York, got a couple jobs, immediately enrolled in some performing arts classes and started auditioning and applying for jobs and doing hosting things on TV and stuff like this. And anyway, I finished university in New York, but then I had that hard decision. Am I going to become a professional actor? Is that what I'm going to do? And that's the direction I went.
Well, that's a hard decision for anyone to make. And what did you take up at school? Like what school did you go to, by the way?
So I finally got my Bachelor of Arts from Columbia University in New York City. I went to Columbia College. It's a liberal arts school. And so my major was sociocultural anthropology, but I also studied film studies there and took an awful lot of dance classes.
Well, that's good. That helps in the career you're in. So, and so this is all the cool stuff you've done, and I guess one thing led to another when you were in Hollywood. And some of the things is that something you always wanted to do as a child, or, you know?
I think when I was a kid, I either wanted to be like finding a cure for cancer, like be this like major scientist, or I wanted to be a rock star. Like I remember like running around my backyard and like headbanging, because it was the 80s, so it was like when hair bands were really big, and my older brothers loved those hair bands. Oh my gosh, so they were watching MTV, blasting it in their cars. So I was around like, Guns N' Roses and Rat and all this. So I would pretend I was singing, but also on MTV we had like Madonna and Cyndi Lauper and those kind of artists too. And so as a small child, I was watching these, and I was like, I want to be a rock star. Like I would watch that. I was like, that's the coolest. And I'm sure kids today want to be Katy Perry or whatever. So I fell victim to that.
Oh, that's brilliant. Now, Jules, let me tell the Sangat first. ਜਿੰਨੀ ਵਾਰ ਵੀ ਮੈਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਮਿਲਿਆ ਆ, ਇਹ ਬਾਣੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ, ਸੰਪੂਰਨ ਬਾਣੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਦਸਤਾਰ ਸਜਾਈ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ, ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਚੋਲਾ ਵੀ ਪਾਇਆ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਆ. So I'm gonna ask you, what led to that transformation? I understand you coming straight from the set today, and thank you so much for doing this. I know you're very tight on schedule, but most of the times when I've seen you, you're with bana and you have a turban on it, and very focused in Sikhi. First of all, I'm gonna ask you, how do you discover Sikhi? How do you get into it?
So when I was I kind of had gotten to this point, and they say it's like, astrologically Saturn return, that time of your life, or, you could call it like the economic downturn that happened, which greatly has affected Hollywood and the kinds of work that up-and-coming actors can procure and the kinds of projects that are being made. Whole industry has shifted, especially with digital and online media and all this. Anyway, so, I had been working a lot as an actor and a model in New York City, and I moved to Los Angeles hoping to get more work in television and film. And it didn't really quite pan out that way. And, I kind of threw myself into a couple relationships, and you kind of get to a point in a relationship where it's like, are we going to get married or are we not? It's got to either move somewhere or it doesn't. And so I had these two really bad breakups where it was like, we wanted to get married, but we just knew it wasn't going to be right. We knew we weren't going to have children together. It was heartbreaking for me, and my career was not going anywhere. And I had this sort of consciousness of poverty, like I can barely pay my rent. I'm a starving artist. I have to go shop at the 99-cent, the dollar store, and my dinner is a can of beans, and I have to walk everywhere. It was like, yes. I was just in that mindset, starving artist, and I was so unhappy, I think all my life I've been very sensitive to the energies around me, and I've been a very spiritual person. I grew up in a religious household. We went to Presbyterian church, and then now my family goes to, it's a Bible church, sort of non-denominational, but a little bit evangelical. I mean, I think part of the Christian faith is you kind of go out and you tell people. That's just sort of part of it. I would go on mission trips as a youth. Fabulous experience. Actually, it was more helpful for us than the third world countries, where I'm sure they were like, who are these people? Yeah,
I was a chapel choir growing up, so I exactly know how the church experience is. So.
But, I went to like a church camp, a Bible camp, Jesus camp, and I found God on a mountaintop when I was 13, and I read the Bible cover to cover. I prayed every night. We went to church every Sunday. It's a very religious family. So I think there's that sort of a discipline and a sense that there is a spiritual component to living was part of my life.
Right.
I totally rejected that when I became, a teenager, and I was like, I'm not going to church anymore. I'd rather ditch church and go to Starbucks and hang out with my friends. And anyway, so I just came to this kind of crisis point, like, what am I doing with my life? I've got a broken heart, I've got a broken heart about my career, and I'm totally broke. My parents, they're, God bless them, but they're like, what are you doing with your life? Everybody around me is like, what are you doing? And I'm like, what am I doing? And I discovered yoga as a teenager. I think it was just kind of like a sort of this popular thing that, health clubs had, gyms had. And so I was going, I would go to classes, and it was more for exercise and things like that. And then when I started taking class, when I was in New York, most of my classes were through NYU, fabulous performing arts program, the Tisch School of the Arts, and amazing acting classes, but yoga and pranayama, like these breathing techniques, were part of it. So I was kind of introduced to the idea of meditation through that. And I think Los Angeles is sort of this hub of, they call it like New Age activity, but everybody does some kind of meditation or yoga, or they've been exposed to it. Like, people know that it exists, right? So I had friends that'd be like, oh, come to this meditation or come to this yoga class with me. And there's so many different styles and so many different teachers and traditions and stuff. But I'd been introduced to yoga, and this girl who I'd met on a series of films that I did, she introduced me to Vipassana style meditation. Sit. You sit and you meditate quietly. And we would, a couple times, like, we'd get together like on a Sunday, and she'd be like, okay, we're setting the timer for an hour. We'll have a 15-minute break where we can get up and walk around, but let's do 6 hours of meditation. The full moon's at 4 o'clock. Like, let's harness this energy and do it. I was like, yeah, I'm so down. That sounds so cool. Like, I dig it. Like, this is new. This is fun. Or she'd be like, let's go to a sweat lodge, or where you sit and meditate for 3 hours while pouring sweat, and you have these experiences and detox. And anyway, I went on a hike one day, because everybody in Los Angeles hikes. We have mountains around. And I was by myself, and I sort of like went to the top, and I kind of went off the trail, and there's this little rocky outcropping, and I just sat and I faced west, and I closed my eyes and kind of did like Vipassana style meditation, because that's all I knew. Yeah. And I just listened, listened to the sounds, and this voice, this whatever from the ethers, who knows, very strong message. Go to Africa and work with AIDS orphans. What? I don't know anyone in Africa. Like, what? Yeah. What kind of message is this? So I had a shaman. This is another. Los Angeles is like awesome. Hollywood is just full of this stuff, right?
Wow. So yoga to shaman. Okay, fine. Yeah.
So this guy was steeped in Native American tradition, and I'd visited a couple times, him to kind of like almost as like a counselor or a therapist, like help me like to intuit, what's going on for me, so I have a clearer picture of which direction I should. That's what he would do. But then he would do like breathing techniques and energy, and he'd have like Native American rattles and drums and chanting. And so anyway, I go to visit him, and I told him about this message I got, and he's like, do it. I'm like, but what if I'm murdered and beaten in Africa?
Like, it's a tough place. Oh yeah.
And he goes, look, just go. So what if you're murdered and beaten? And I'm like, okay. And he's like, the thing about you, Jules, is you're somebody who can walk around with no shoes on, in native dress, or you can, go to a cocktail party and have high heels on and be all dressed up. You could fit in no matter where you go. Africa is going to be amazing for you. Go. So I'm like, okay, all right. So I stopped everything, stopped the work I was doing, rented out my apartment. I just stopped everything. And this one friend of mine was like, come to this yoga class. And in the lobby after the yoga class, there were these people that were like, oh, are you going to this summer solstice celebration, and that's the put on by the 3HO organization. So the sort of this lineage of Yogi Bhajan, who came to the United States in the late 1969, and was teaching. At first Hatha Yoga, but I think he came to Canada first.
He did, yes. He's a very sound following of Yogi Bhajan's students here. And as you guys also see, by Harinam Singh Ji Khalsa, who's one of his students as well, who does a lot of shows on Sikh TV as well, on Sikh channel.
Yeah. So anyway, somebody invited me to that 3HO thing. I managed to get like a work exchange to just go, and I was like, that sounds great. And my friend was like, let's do a road trip, let's go. So it just went, like I dropped everything in my life and I was ready to have a many-month adventure of like traveling. And so that was like my first exposure to, I suppose, anything Sikhi. Like I didn't even know that there was a Gurdwara there.
Right.
I had no clue that even existed.
And where were you exactly in Kenya, right?
Oh, yeah. So I was talking about the summer solstice. But anyway, so I went to that celebration.
I'll get back to Africa here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so then I, right after that ended, I got on a plane. I went to Bangkok. And then I traveled down to the southern Thai islands. Then I traveled to Indonesia. Then I traveled to Singapore. All the while I was visiting people that I'd met or heard about or whatever. I went to the UK because I have some family there. Then I got on my plane that I had booked to Nairobi. I didn't know anyone. It was via Twitter that I found a couple organizations who sort of were like, oh, yes, like we're looking for somebody to volunteer with our organization. So I worked with actually a group in Nairobi in Kibera, which is the largest slum in Africa. And it was a foundation called Hot Sun Foundation, which teaches film and television to youths. Wow. In the slums, so they get an education on how to make films, so it was an art medium to tell their stories, and then they can possibly graduate their programs and go on to work, at television networks and things like that, or as filmmakers. It's a really cool program. And then I volunteered with, it's called African Children's Foundation, and they have their hands in a bunch of different projects. So I actually worked at an orphanage in more rural Kenya. Yeah. And then I went to Tanzania, to Zanzibar. I kind of started a foundation there, a forest and village protection program. And when I was there, I was like, I've always wanted to go to India. I'm not going to head back to the U.S. for Labor Day like I was planning on. How much would a ticket to India be, right? So I typed in New Delhi on kayak.com or whatever. Right. $300, that's nothing.
Right.
I'm going to do this. So I went to the consulate, got a visa, and I just went. This lady from Singapore I'd met, she said, and I have a little journal and I would keep track of my travels, right? And she told me, she said, she was all psychic and everything. She said, you would like this place, Anand Prasad. I think she may have told me wrong, or I wrote it down wrong. I wrote down Anand which doesn't exist. But that's what I had written on this Post-it note. And when I was in Zanzibar, I met this Turkish backpacker who told me about Amritsar and the Golden Temple. She said, "Oh, it's fabulous. You must go." But I wrote that down too, Amritsar. So I had no guidebook. I didn't know anyone. Nothing. Got this plane ticket to New Delhi. I fly to Delhi, and I knew that where I wanted to go was Punjab, so I got a train ticket to Chandigarh, and I get off the train there, and on my bag, it's monsoon season. I don't speak Punjabi. I don't know anything. And I'm asking the taxi drivers, showing them my little book, can you take me to Anandzur? And they're like, oh, 2,500 rupees, And I had no cash on me. I was like, what do I do? That's too much money, and I don't know. And they were all being heckling me, and I got a rickshaw over to the bus stand because I was like, oh, if there's a bus station, then maybe somebody can help me there. And by the grace of God, right? Guru Prasad, I met this woman and she spoke English, and she said, I think where you want to go is Anand Prasad. Anand Sor doesn't exist. If Amritsar is not where you're going, then it's Anand Prasad.
What year was this? Do you remember?
2011.
2011. Wow, that's about 3 years ago.
Yeah. And so she put me on, bus number 81 or whatever, and off I went to Anand Prasad. And So I get off at the bus stand. It's the afternoon, Sunday afternoon. It's the market, you know, and I get off and I have my bag, you know, and I'm sweating profusely because it's like 37 degrees and it's humid and it's monsoon season, and all the teenagers are around me, you know, with their Nokias, and they're taking pictures and they're making fun of me because I'm so pale and I'm pouring sweat, and I'm wearing these like hippie tie-dye clothes, and I must have looked ridiculous, and so anyway.
Did you check the weather before you went to India?
No, of course not.
That explains it.
I was a total hippie. I was a backpacker, you know. I was just like, whatever, here we go, you know.
Perfect. So you're in Anandpur Sahib.
I'm in Anandpur Sahib, and actually, there's this Nihang man there, and he actually spotted me first, and you know, he said, "Oh, let me go get my wife," because he had married an English girl, and so she and I were conversing, and I was like, "Oh, please, you know, I don't speak the language, and I don't know where I."
You know what? This channel is from the UK, and you can tell the name of the person, and many people will recognize the name.
Oh, I think she's going by the name now, Uttarankarji. So.
Uttarankarji?
Uttarang, yeah.
Uttarankar. Okay, and what was her previous name?
She had a 3HO name, but her English name is Alexandra Aitken.
Alexandra Aitkins.
Yeah.
You guys remember that name, Alexandra Aitkins? It was a big news about her that she married a Nihang Singh in India, and that's what Jules met in Anandpur Sahib. So it's a very fascinating story. So we'll continue on with the story. We got some other time to cover up on that.
Yeah. So anyway, I was like, please show me around. I don't know where I am. Anything, like help. I don't know where I am. And so they were like, well, we have to go to Amritsar. We only have a few minutes, but. And they were like talking. They're like, let's just show her the Gurdwara, and we'll give her our friend's phone number, and he can help show her around too. And they actually took me to a shop, and they got me some fabrics for dastar and a chuni, and you know, they were like, here, put, you know, like, be decent.
But did you know about Sikhism before you got to that place?
I didn't really know much. I really didn't know much. Like I said, I'd been exposed at that 3HO for 1 week. I'd been exposed to the Kundalini yoga as taught by Yogi Bhajan, which uses mantra that comes from Shabads, from Dasam Granth and Sri Guru Granth Sahib. So I'd heard these sounds, but I didn't know what a Gurdwara was. I didn't know anything about the gurus or history, nothing.
Wow.
I just knew it was. I just thought it was a spirit, a religion, I guess, in India. That's all I knew, you know.
Right.
But you know, I was cut free and I was not tied down to anything, and there's this calling in me, and I was just following the wind and the sun, really, and the calling was so strong. I think that's where I ended up. I had downloaded before I left United States that a track by Sanatana Kaur, Mool Mantra. And I used to play it like when I was in Africa, when I was doing my volunteering, and it just brought me so much peace. I remember playing it in Thailand in the morning. There's so much peace. And I played it almost every day. And I think that, that nod, that vibration, I don't think it's a mistake. I think that's how I ended up in Punjab, and that's, I had no plan to go to India.
So you think that Nam or the Nad or the mantra kind of guided your life that way? Okay, well that's.
Well, I think it just like having that in my
consciousness.
Yeah, whether I knew it or not.
Right.
I just thought it was a pretty song, but. It's an awful lot more than that,
No, this is what it is. The way your spirituality works. I mean, most of the people who know me, they know my background. Although I was born in a very, in a Sikh family, that a lot of people know them. But I was in the Singh always, and I kind of rediscovered myself, and I was a reborn Sikh, if you will, right? And this is, and we all, the people who have been through this process, we all share these uncanny resemblance at one point in our lives. And this is exactly what I wanted you to speak about. Like this is very powerful stuff, and it's very emotionally rejuvenating and as well as spiritually, motivating too. And could you share a little bit more about what you actually experienced? Just in your own words.
Yeah, sure. So anyway, so like I said, we had like 5 minutes, we had like no time, but Ali and her husband, they're like, okay, so here you wash your feet, here you wash your hands, here let's go up the steps.
That's not for sale, okay.
Yeah, they're like, here, people kiss and touch this nishan. So I didn't know what anything was, okay. So I'm like, okay. They're like, here's prasad, and I was like, oh, okay, like this is cool, right? And then they give me, a dollar, a rupee or whatever to put in the, they're like, here, and you bow here. And I'm like, oh, okay. And they're like, okay, and let's come back here, and you just sit. And Uttarang, she says, just sit and listen. Just listen to the sounds, just sit and meditate. This is where we meditate. And so I just sat down, in the back of Kishgar Sahib, and, just closed my eyes, and I was just totally overcome. And I have to say, I had been to so many temples all over Southeast Asia, Africa. I'd been in these witch doctor caves and Hindu temples, and I'd been to pujas and holiday ceremonies and churches and cathedrals and zendos and Buddhist retreats, and it never quite did it for me. It never. But I sat down there and, heard that Gurbani for the first time, and just tears, pouring out of my eyes. And I mean, I was just so totally overcome, and it was so vast and so, unexplainable, right?
I can ask any question.
Yeah, it was so intense, and Uttarang looks over at me. She's like, "You've been here before. You've been here many lifetimes before." And I'd never heard anything like that, and I was like, what does that mean, okay? But then they're like, we have to go. But so anyway, you can come here anytime and meditate, And so that was it. That was my introduction.
Oh, wow. So,
so they said, here, like, you should definitely stay at this. Yogi Bhajan had set up outside of Anandpur. He calls it Dashmi Sadan, and it's like a ashram, I guess, with the intent of having people come and stay there. I was the only person there. So I was there by myself for 11 days. And, just had the whole place to myself. It was like me and the gardener and the caretaker and the guard. They would come sometimes during the day. And so I would go to the Gurdwara every day and just sit down and meditate. And so the only mantra that I knew was Mool mantra, right? So I would repeat that over and over to myself. And I would just sit and meditate. And I mean, I got this, you can call it a heavy download, but it was my first, I'll call it like Waheguru experience. And I remember like one night I couldn't sleep very well. And so somebody, the gardener had said, I said, what's a good time to go over there to that temple, right? Like what's the best time of day? Because I've noticed that sometimes they have music, sometimes they don't have music. Like what's the best time? And he's like, go at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. And I'm like, oh, no way, it's dark out. I'm a single white woman. Like, I'm not going to walk around. Like, I can't ride my bike over there. So I wasn't going to do that, But it was 4 a.m. and I couldn't sleep. So I climbed up to the roof of where I was staying there at the ashram. And I just sat down and I closed my eyes and I started chanting Mool mantra, chanting out loud over and over. The sun is rising. And it was like lifetimes of stuff just left me, like all this stuff, either you could say it being pulled out of my subconscious or, connecting. And I felt for the first time sort of as if there's, when there's a mirror in front of you and a mirror behind you, right? And so you can see your reflection forever. It felt like that in all directions, just Waheguru, right? And everything lined up perfectly, like all aspects, all moments of my life up to that point, every heartache, every victory, everything was just in complete and total perfection. And it was just like a complete Anand, right? And anyway, so after these very strong experiences that were completely undeniable, I went to China and then I came back to the U.S. and there was only actually one Sikh man that I knew, and that's because my friend had stayed at his house. And so I said, hey, is there a Gurdwara around here? And he's like, yeah, actually there's one right here. You should come on Sunday, come at 11 o'clock. And that was that. And so I got very involved with, it's a very small Gurdwara that we have. It's near Beverly Hills, Guru Ramdas Gurdwara. And I started doing a ton of seva there. We have a Langar program that was started through the Khalsa Peace Corps program, and I was doing seva with them for many months. You know, just involving myself with that community, and then kind of the 3HO community with the, we have some very large yoga centers in Los Angeles. And so, you know, involved with that. I'm now a yoga teacher. I teach Hatha, but I teach this Kundalini yoga mostly, and I am obviously still acting. So that's my story in a nutshell.
This is brilliant. This is really powerful. And let me ask you some more things about this. So since you got back and you can read Punjabi, and how do you learn to read Punjabi?
I taught myself.
Oh wow! What resources did you use to do this?
So basically, I would just listen to Japji Sahib over and over.
Right.
So I figured out that, you know, Mantra was from Japji, and I was like, oh, I want to learn. I couldn't learn enough, and I'm still learning. So, you know, again, please, like, I'm trying, like, so hard to, like, learn, and I apologize if I seem disrespectful or mispronounce anything. But, you know, I couldn't get enough of Japji Sahib, and even the first time I read it or the first time I heard it, I was like, this is epic. I mean, this is so beyond time and space, and I understood that. So I started really studying that, and I'm actually, there's a group that was started by Dion Kaur. She lives in Manitoba, actually, and she started this online group. There's like Facebook. She has a web page, and we're doing right now. We're almost done with it. But Japji Sahib, the deeper series. So every day we're doing 11 recitations of each puri, but we're moving through them, right? And so there's recordings and you know, translations, and so I've really enjoyed this practice. You know, it's 400 some days when you count all the puris. It's really, I've gotten into the study of it deeper.
Sangat ji, ek Maharaj di, I'm just going to share one thing that just came to my mind. Charan saran gur ek penda jai chal satgur kot penda aage hoy le thain. If you walk one step toward the Guru comes and takes you 100,000 steps toward himself. And this is actually in practice. I think that's the biggest testimony you can get on my show, at least, for all the people I've interviewed here. This is the actual experience, and this is beyond your amritari, your non-amritari. Amritari is a discipline that takes you there. You know what I mean? But you need that love. If you don't have that love, that emotion, that intensity of feelings, and that's, I think, defines any religion, and Sikh especially. So thank you so much for sharing that. And you know what? And we talked about it's just out of love and your drive that, well, I would say, and you say always, Gur Prasad. Guru Sahib helped you to get through this, right?
Yeah.
And now something that I'm really curious, and a lot of people would too. How do you balance your career in the showbiz industry and then also keeping up with your spiritual path?
Yeah, so when I got back to the U.S., you know, these spiritual experiences I had in these few weeks in India were. Oh, I went to Amritsar after I went to Anandpur Sahib, in case anyone wants to know. And then I went over to Haridwar, Rishikesh. I wanted to go up to Hemkund, but I didn't have enough time. Anyway, so these experiences I had were so strong, okay? And like, so it's almost like you're in a giant earthquake or some huge thing that just totally uproots your entire life.
Moments, isn't it?
Completely life-altering. And all the seva that I was doing in Africa was really life-changing as well. I someday I want to go back and make a film there, and also work with some foundations there. But we're getting there. I have to fill up my own. I have to fill myself up, first, and I want to get my career off the ground before I can give out to others. But anyway, so when I first got back, it was extremely difficult for me to even think about acting anymore, because I'm like, Hollywood? And on Versailles, I don't think they could be any different. Maybe there are some similarities. I don't know. There are tourist stands for sure in both, but just the values of, and it was. For the last couple of years, I've actually been. This is something that I've been working with. Finding the balance between what am I supposed to do and what am I supposed to do, basically. Good for Sad, I have these amazing people in our Sangha, and some Punjabis who were saying, just keep following your heart, just keep doing what you're doing, like keep your studies up, just follow your heart, follow your heart, follow your heart. And my heart's with Gurbani. I mean, that may sound cheesy, but it's really true. And it's strange, I'm not this is not typically something someone in Hollywood does. It's just not.
Yeah.
But I look at it like, I've been given, this incarnation in a certain time and space, and this background in acting and modeling and the film industry. I look at it as a gift, and one of my teachers said, like just the way you are, like your phenotype, how you were made, it's a gift, and you look good on camera by Hollywood standards. So, keep going with this and see where it takes you. There are certain jobs. I actually walked off one TV set because I didn't like. It was a comedy. It was a sitcom, and there was some improvisation, and I didn't like the direction it was going. I felt it was disrespectful to women. It was very, very small comments, and I don't even know if they made the final cut. I don't even think the show got picked up. It was a pilot shoot. But I said I refuse to do this. So they stuck me in the background, because they were furious with me. They'd hired me on to play this role, and I said, nope, I don't like the way this is going. I've taken a stand for myself like that a couple times. I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, there's certain jobs I won't do anymore. I used to do these jobs where I was just like standing in a bikini, around at a party and stuff. I'm just not interested in doing that. I mean, I am getting older anyway, but it's like, I just, I think, women are so objectified in the entertainment industry. It's a good thing and a bad thing. I just, I want to take roles where women are strong, where women are shown as, if it's a homemaking role, I want to show that they're really like the backbone of that household, and strong women who are making a difference and doing things and that have values and morals. And I think that my foray into Sikhi and Sikhism and studying the Guru and things like this, I think it's just brought this a vast awareness, a consciousness. Some people call it grace, but they're just language. There's certain language that I don't feel so comfortable even auditioning with, like when I read a script. And there's certain scripts, I've read scripts, and after reading it, no, I'm sorry, this project's not for me. I'm not going to take that now.
I'm going to give another example from Gurbani. And, when I was involved in the Hollywood production, and some of you might know that Rob Lowe, Russell Peters, and Akshay Kumar made a movie, Breakaway, and I was at the set, right? And we were looking at all the things, like exactly what you said, you got to make up hard if you're a woman, and, as opposed to all the other things that you got to audition through. And there's one thing that occurred to me at that point, is Guru Sahib says in Gurbani, "Sah sariyan bhagtan jod kade na aaya." I may pronounce it incorrectly. I think that's what it. Sansariyan bhagtan jod kade na aaya. So that means the way the world works and the societal pressures on you and all those different things. what they want you to do is totally different from what Guru Sahib teaches you.
Yes.
So you cannot find a perfect match, but you can balance it, you know, and you work toward a place where your gurmat goes over the worldly pressures, and you can define yourself. And that's the path I believe that you're on too, eh?
Yeah.
That's where you're trying to, like, all the experiences and things that we shared before, and also what you told us on the show. It's definitely a challenge.
Yeah.
It's not very easy to do.
And, you know, I am not Amritdhari, I'm not. But, you know, we at our Gurdwara, we are allowed to, you know, respectfully, and if you show up in Bana and stuff, you're allowed to quietly sit and observe Amrit Sanchar. So I've done that several times, and I felt that exact same experience almost, you know, that I had when I first sat down at Kishkar Sahib. So I feel that Guru Gobind Singh energy, and I mean, it's so powerful, so undeniable. And so, you know, I try to follow, you know, the Rahat as much as I can.
Right.
The one thing that's really tripped me up these last 3 years is, you know, I'm stuck on this, it's like appearance, right? And this is Hollywood, right? So it's not so ironic, I guess.
Right.
But it is actually keeping my hair, because, you know, on set they want me to have eyebrows a certain shape, and they want to put makeup on you. And you know, I have been told, can you do something about your legs? You know, can you please shave? So, you know, there's only been a couple times where I've had to actually sort of like, oh, okay, all right, fine, you know, like compromise and have my eyebrows done or something like this. But I have followed, you know, it's as much as I can. I'm doing what I can, you know, and I know in my heart, you know, I have a daily practice, and that has given, you know, so much. That has just brought so much into my life. It totally taking me to like next level. You know, any sort of jap, any sort of meditation you do in Simran is, I mean, it's epic. I'll use that word again.
Nice.
But so I think that's really, you know, and then it's kind of like I used to worry about all this so much, and I used to have so much anxiety about all of it. But I think it's really, you know, I don't really, again, I think there's sort of like this, all that goes, you know, it's like it's like I know it's Guru Prasad where I go now, and I feel like I've been able to like let go of myself, you know, if you want to call it ankar or whatever, like let go of it a little bit, and then, you know, and let God. And so, yeah, I feel like the right jobs are going to come my way. You know, the things I have lined up, I'm really excited about. And the other thing I've learned is that, you know, productions, like even the writer, the director, the producers, if it's the right production for you and they really want you, they're willing to work with you. And you know, you really you bring that character to life. So, you know, with a lot of these characters, you know, I'll say, hey, you know, what if she says the line this way? Or what if she wears this? So yeah, I feel like I've been really, really, really blessed, and the more deeply I've sort of gone into my spiritual practice, actually the more everything has kind of just lined up perfectly, and it's been really beautiful. And I think there has been a struggle, and you know, I still sort of wonder, like, at some point I really would like to walk down the red carpet in full bana. Like, that is actually a goal of mine. And there's actually a woman who I know, her husband is an award-winning, like a very top music composer in Los Angeles and Hollywood. He's won all kinds of awards. And they've gone to, you know, the Academy Awards, or, you know, all these other ones, the Emmys, whatever, what have you. And she dresses up in bana with, you know, dastar and chuni and, you know, beautiful kurta. And I just think that's so beautiful, so beautiful. And actually, if you watch the Academy Awards, once in a while you will see a turban in the audience, and just you have to look closely. But that's always, I'm like, yay, there it is.
Oh, Well, there you guys. We're making it there too. And we're going toward the end of the show. There's something I think most of our viewers will want to know about this too. How do your parents react to this?
We're working on it.
This transformation, if I may, because they come from a very religious background as well, and they see you adopting a new faith and living a new lifestyle. And so, like some of the challenges and some of the things that you want to share.
Yeah, I think, it has not been an easy thing for sure. Yeah, like at first, I think it was a little bit heartbreaking for them. I think they still kind of think that this is just a phase that I'm going through.
Oh, you know what? A lot of Punjabi parents think about when the kids start to keep hair and they start wearing bana, and so I'm like, oh God, he may not go to India and do something big over there. And this is something that Indian parents also go through. So I think for them to go through is pretty normal, but I still want to hear a little bit more. Sorry to interject there.
So, I mean, and I think that it was also heartbreaking for me. It's been difficult, and we're working on it, and we've had some talks about it and stuff. I do still sort of keep my my spiritual practice. I don't really talk about it with them. They know that I like to go to on Sundays. I call it the Sikh church, the Sikh service. I think that they have an understanding that the Sikhs are. They think a peace-loving people. They say, So I think they don't have an understanding at all. They don't know anything. But where they live, and actually where my sister lives in Northern Virginia, there's a very, 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 very large immigrant population from India, and a lot of Southern Indians, but there are a lot of Punjabis as well. And I know, like in her apartment complex where she used to live, there were some Punjabi families, and so there's becoming an exposure. I think it's pretty separate, but the kids are mixed at school. They go to school together, and my sister's a school teacher, and so there's becoming like an open mind to this. I think it's more like my family is like. I've always been a little bit different. I've always been a little bit strange. I've been that kid, that person. I just always have been. So I don't think it's much of a shock or surprise for them. But I think that they're slowly warming up to it. But here's the thing: the more I work on myself, and the more if you want to say like the peace, sukh santok, whatever it is, like that I develop within myself, which I think has come, the more I sort of, sit down and really work with Guru Granth Sahib Ji and really meditate and really sort of, go to these places and be with my Sangit or any Sangit, right? I've grown. My whole energy has completely changed, and my whole understanding of things has totally changed. And my family has noticed that, whether they know it or not, they've taken note. And I think as I've grown and sort of, things are going to be okay. I think they're kind of on that level as well. Like things are going to be okay.
Perfect. Now I'm going to end it up with a very quick trivia, and we have been through all the serious talks, and they were very insightful, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people are going to take a lot away from it. But I'm going to ask you a few quick questions, and you got to give a quick answer to
Okay.
them. What's your favorite movie?
I really liked The Goonies. I still like it. I love that movie.
Can't believe you said that, but favorite place to visit?
Anandpur Sahib.
Oh, there we go. I think that was a given.
If I could go anywhere in the world, Anandpur Sahib.
Favorite food?
Oh gosh, we'll see. Now here I am in Ontario. I'm vegan, but I'm not gonna lie. If somebody makes a really good sabji, you've won my heart. So Perfect. There we go.
Excellent. So last question, since you're an athlete, your favorite sports team? Could be from any league.
I don't watch sports.
Okay. Well, you ever did when you were growing up? Or?
Yeah, I like baseball, and my father's family's from Southern Illinois, so I'm going to have to say the Cardinals.
Oh, there we are. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming over, and wish you all the best.
Thank you.
And we'll really look forward to do more shows with you as you grow in your spiritual role and also in your Hollywood career.
This is such a blessing. Thank you all so much.
No problem. ਸੋ ਇਹ ਸੀਗਾ ਅੱਜ ਸਾਡਾ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਤੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਉਮੀਦ ਹੈ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਪਸੰਦ ਆਇਆ ਹੋਵੇਗਾ। ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਸਵਾਲਾਤ ਹੋਣ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜਰੂਰ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਰਾਬਤਾ ਕਾਇਮ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ। ਅਗਲੇ ਹਫਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਨਵਾਂ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਫੇਰ ਹਾਜ਼ਰ ਹੋਵਾਂਗੇ। ਜਦ ਤੱਕ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।